Good morning. We hope you're in good form this morning. It is a nice Wednesday. We're going to talk to John Boyle in a second. He is Secretary General of the Irish National Teachers Organisation about schools reopening in August, September. If you're a parent, if you're concerned, if you want to know what's going to happen, please text us 083 3333 975 if you have any questions for John, or you can call Audrey on 051 846 123. We're going to be talking to business owners about the reopening of their pubs and restaurants and what constitutes a substantial meal in the eyes of the medical profession. Is a purple schnack a pink schnack? Is it a bag of potato? Let us know what you think. We're going to talk about these thermometers that businesses are putting in front of businesses and shops. Are they going to work? Are they necessary? What's good about them? And we're going to be talking about many different sporting matters. And Grattan Square in Dungarvan, they're digging it up again. Let us know what you think. Firstly, we're going to go straight to John. Good morning, John.
How are you doing, Damien?
I'm great, thank you. I'm great. How are you keeping?
Oh, very well, thanks. Not a very nice morning in Dublin, unfortunately.
Ah, right. Well, it's tropical down here. Tropical southeast, not the sunny southeast. Tropical. So we've a little bit of rain, but it'll be grand. You'll have to come down sometime to say hello to us.
Well, once we lift these restrictions now, I'll be heading down there for a couple of weeks in the summer, hopefully.
Lovely. Very good. Very good. You're Secretary General of the Irish National Teachers Organisation, the INTO, and you've been writing in papers and commenting about the schools reopening. Firstly, we'll talk about the different creative models that may be applicable for primary schools in a few minutes. Can you say categorically that schools at this stage are going to reopen in August?
I did say that actually last week in the Irish Times, Damien. I genuinely believe that there's a will now, a strong will among all the stakeholders and the department, and I think we'll get that clarification after the Cabinet meeting on Friday. I mean, the big question mark, though, really is in what way will they open? Schools generally in secondary and primary, they would open maybe between the 25th of August right through until the following Tuesday, the 1st of September, in line with the standardised school year. So I expect all schools in Ireland will open, but whether all the children will be back together in their class, that's really the big conundrum at the moment, and we might have more clarity on that on Friday.
Yeah, and we're looking forward and anticipating that, because these will be the national guidelines as they're applied to different sectors, and one of the sectors obviously is the education sector, and the idea of the metre or the 2 metre distancing. Just remind people as well, John, the importance of class size, because we've talked about this consistently over the years. And I know your union has raised it many, many times. Approximately the average class size for primary schools in Ireland?
Well, the schools are generally given a teacher based on either 25 or 26 children. So in the really big schools, you get a teacher on 26, and in the smaller schools, maybe on 25 children. In fact, in the really small schools, it's worse again due to cuts that happened 8 or 9 years ago. So yeah, the average in Ireland is in around 25, whereas the European average is 20. And obviously, we'll be hoping when the programme for government is written that right will be wrong, that wrong will be righted as well. That we'll get down at least to 20 and as quickly as possible. It's really brought public consciousness onto this issue, I think, with the COVID, because other countries have managed to bring smaller pods of children and have managed to reopen their schools. Now, these countries, of course, had an earlier lockdown than Ireland, but when they brought them back, some of them were able to bring the full class back. And in our situation, we have 20% of the classes with 30 children or more, and they're the biggest in the Eurozone by far. And in that situation, when you have only 80 square metres, if it's strictly a 2 metre social physical distancing rule, it's just not physically possible to get 30 children and 1 or 2 adults into our sized classrooms. Some of our classrooms are old school buildings with maybe only 50 square metres in the classroom. But I don't think that the social distancing rule of 2 metres is going to be the key factor here, really, because I think the public health advisors are going to be looking at international trends about, the spread of the infection among children and how that spread then affects the workers and maybe the parents outside the school door. They're going to look at a lot of different things. And interestingly, when it came to the childcare sector, for children less than 6 years of age, and we have quite a lot of them too in primary schools, the question of the 1 and 2 metre rule didn't really arise for those. So it'll be just interesting to see on Friday if the public health advice for the school sector or for the primary sector in our case would maybe move away from this big question about 1 to 2 metres and look at it more creatively.
OK, well, let's say we do move away from the 1 to 2 metre debate, because most primary schools, they have desks where maybe 4, but at least 2 children will sit at each desk. This idea of people having individual desks. There's very few classrooms and schools with individual desks, John, isn't there?
Very, very few. We do have some of these resource rooms where individual help is given to children who maybe might have a complex need for a short part of the day. But generally speaking, in the Irish primary curriculum since the 1970s, the children are grouped because, the cooperative learning is more important.
Yes.
So you could have 4 children around maybe, 2 desks stuck together, or sometimes a circular desk. And in that scenario, you see, I know that in the preschool sector, they're looking at maybe trying to keep that little pod of children away from the other pods of children in the classroom. Now, that is not going to be very easy with a class of junior infants. But I think the most significant thing in the current thinking, and I've been at a number of meetings with the department, is that they're thinking about at least trying to isolate each class from the classrooms next door, and maybe try to minimise the amount of movement around the school building, so that if there was an outbreak, perhaps, or a case in a class, that rather than the whole school having to close down as happened in other countries, that maybe only that class or a group of children in that class would have to be tested and traced, and that it wouldn't affect the full school closure. So we'll hear more about that on Friday as well.
Yeah.
No doubt.
And let's then talk about the other option, the potential option of staggered school days, and some students going to school maybe 3 days a week or 2.5 days a week, and the difficulties that would create, John, for parents.
No, none of these are ideal, not alone for the poor parents, who some of them would be hoping to get back to work, and then you may have a family who would have somebody ill in the family, or you could have a case that people are still working from home at that point and maybe finding it difficult to get childcare for the smaller ones. So it would be far from ideal for the family, but I suppose from our point of view, for the child even, children learn much better cooperatively together, and that's the big loss that they've had. I suppose the teachers have continued to support their learning remotely, and any of them that are maybe lucky enough to have a few siblings, at least they weren't isolated. But we have, a number of children who haven't seen their friends up until this week, and that has been difficult for them. So I would sincerely hope that we wouldn't have to go down that road. I know that other countries have used that half the class comes in on Monday and Tuesday, the other half comes in on Thursday and Friday. And the Wednesday is a day for planning, cleaning, and also for reaching out to the children who simply couldn't come back to school because of underlying health conditions and so on. So I'd hope to avoid that type of thing now, Damien. But as they say, the public health advisors will make a call on this, and if we're in a situation that it's safe to get all the children back on the one day together, there's another possibility around staggering, and that's the question of whether all the children would be coming in at the exact same time in the morning and going home at the exact same time in the afternoon. And I know in a small rural school that wouldn't really be an issue, but in the school where I was principal teacher, we had 416 children in infant classes going home at 1:30 every day, with nearly as many parents and siblings waiting for them outside. So that might be something that would have to be addressed, that they wouldn't all go home at the one time, that maybe there could be 5 or 10 minute intervals. Yeah,
and the idea of contact tracing is doable in schools because obviously the students know who they're going to be connected with, and the idea of maybe classrooms isolating themselves seems like a potential solution to this. I just can't see this idea of students going maybe 2 days a week to school. I can't see that being a runner, John. I know for your teachers, obviously you're going to be there every day of the week, but for parents it's just not going to work.
And even for the teacher, Damien, if you have half of your class, say, at home, you're very worried about that half while they're at home, and you want their continuity of learning not to be affected either. So how do you teach the 15 children in front of you and get down and meet them in their groups and give individual attention to children who need it, and at the same time you have another 15 children who are not in front of you that particular day? So I think all in all we would try to avoid that, but I know that in some secondary schools abroad as well that they have the week on, week off, and again I'm sure that's very, very difficult for families, but I suppose the secondary school children, might have better provision with digital learning than we have in primary. The government has really underinvested in the primary sector in relation to broadband and digital learning over the years, and that has been a challenge as well.
And creches are obviously going to struggle to cope as well if there's going to be staggered hours. Just read out just one simple text just come in from a part-time secretary in a small school, John. I'm not going to mention her name. I've already been told by my principal that she will not be putting any changes in place regarding sanitisers, regular cleaning, etc., as she feels the children don't even wash their hands, so why waste the money? She intends asking the teachers and myself to sign a form saying we're happy to work without these safety measures. This puts me in a very worrying situation as I depend on this wage, but will be very worried about getting COVID or spreading it to my family. I'm also currently expected to work as normal with no changes in place instead of from home. Any advice? So
yeah, well, I can probably give a bit of advice there, I suppose. Initially, in some ways I have to sympathise with principal, teachers and boards of management because, they've been crying out for guidance on the reopening, and, there's been a big debate about when will schools reopen. Now that we know that it's for late August, I'm pretty confident now that by next Monday at the latest that schools will have, pretty detailed guidance. And, for example, that every single staff member, including the part-time secretary, will have to sign a return to work form. And this would be nationally agreed form that every school will be mandated to use in line with the National Return to Work Protocol for all workers. That there will be a very detailed guidance document around dealing with infection in schools. And I'm pretty confident as well that the Department of Education and Skills will be beginning a procurement process around hand sanitisers for all schools. And, in the very small schools where the capitation grant is so small, less than €1, but just at the moment €1 per day per child, school principals and boards of management are really concerned about having enough money to fund the extra PPE. But I don't know if we'll need PPE, but we'll certainly need hand sanitisers. And the Minister McHugh has already identified that it could cost up to 24 million for extra cleaning and hand sanitisers up until Christmas alone. So I'm hopeful the Cabinet will sign off on this, and that principal teachers who are sort of maybe trying to plan ahead themselves without guidance, that they'll have that guidance, and that everybody will have to follow it to the letter of the law.
John, it's a pleasure talking to you again. Thanks very much. Really appreciate it.
You're very welcome, Damien. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Boyle there, Secretary-General of the Irish National Teachers Organisation. What do you think? A texter, what about children with critical underlying medical conditions? That hasn't been dealt with, and that something has to be dealt with, says this person. Damien, this is just madness. Leave all the children, go back to school as normal in September. It's still 3 months away. Shops are back open. Lives have to resume. Staggered times are just crazy and won't work. And in today's Irish Independent, a plan for the reopening of the creche sector by Children's Minister Catherine Zappone said providers may be unlikely to meet any increased demand as they may be operating at reduced capacity. So there's so many issues still around this very, very important topic. Let us know what you think. 083 3333 975. Next, we're going to hear from a business person who's looking at getting open his pub restaurant and what he's actually having to do to try and make this viable. Now, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Bernadette Phillips has contacted me through Facebook to say that Vodafone and some 3 shops are also not taking cash at the tills, using card-only payment policy. Wondering, other shops are doing this previously. Homebase is talking about this. Bernadette believes this policy excludes people who only use cash. Older people in particular who have pensions paid in cash and some social welfare recipients. And this, in my view, is a discriminatory policy. Well, you heard Dermot Jewell on the programme yesterday, and we're going to follow it up during the week to see if we can get a correct and, I suppose, definitive answer on this. From what Dermot said yesterday was, once a shop identifies at the store and tells people that it's cash only, that it's not illegal for them to do that. So let us know what you think. If you feel this is discriminatory, text us in, please. Now, in Tramore, there's this wonderful bar restaurant called the Esquire, and the owner is Paul Horan. He's been in business for decades, over 40 years. He's a chef. He's in his early 70s. He's still working away. He has had to look at reconfiguring his entire lounge area and the bar area to see how he's going to reopen in the next few weeks and whether it will actually be economically viable. I went out to visit him to see what changes he's making. We're standing in the lounge, the new restaurant. I can smell the paint. I can see a lot of the work that you've done, and we'll put a lot of this up on the video. Talk to me about what you've done in this particular section first.
Well, in this section, I had to take the doorway and bring it into an acceptable level because there was a very bad stepping area coming into it. So we rearranged that. Then we've isolated all the tables into the COVID 2 metre distance apart.
So how many tables have you lost, for example, in this area here?
In this area here, we've lost 2 in this particular area. And overall, we've lost 8 tables in the area, 3 areas.
And some of those tables were quite large.
They were. I mean, there was family tables from 8 to 12 and, tables for 6s, like, for parties and stuff like that. They're all obviously gone amiss.
What else have you done here? I can smell paint. There's a big refurbishment.
Big refurbishment. We put in 2 extra toilets for this particular area. So we now have 5 toilets for social distance, which we're putting up red and green flags and stickers so that when people go to the toilet, they can actually, if it's red, they go away. If it's green, they can go in. And we have all isolated units there with for the gel and the towels, the wipes, and each one of those is positioned at each table, at each cubicle area. Yeah.
So looking at the tables here, we've got a small table, small enough, but seating for 4 people. 4 people there, another one there. Then looking up here, we just walk up this way, up onto new carpet. Is it?
Oh, brand new carpet.
Wow. And again, you've done different areas here. So you basically worked out the social distancing for the 2 metres.
Yeah, and we put in screenings then in between each table, and then we have pop-up screenings then to separate them with the Esquire on them and a dining facility on them as well.
How much hassle has all this been?
At my age, extreme hassle. Is it worth it? I don't know. Will we be able to get back to where we were? I doubt it very much. But I mean, it's strange times. You do what you do. I think I'm doing the right thing. I want people to come back. And I've done what I think is right, and I've gone by the specification that has been handed out through the Vintners Federation and the Hotel Federation of Ireland, the Restaurant Association of Ireland, and you can only follow their instructions, and I've done that to the best of my ability.
How much money have you had to spend? Have you got any grants from the government? Has there been any help at all?
There's been no help. I got a continuity voucher for £2,500. I got an overdraft in the bank in the AIB for 50,000. My own personal pension of 78,000, which I got half of. I couldn't get that redeemed, less the tax, so I lost half of that, and I put that into it. It's standing me now at the moment. I'm down to the bone, 138,000.
That's a lot of meals. That's a lot of pints that you're going to have to try and sell over the next 12 months to even get some of that back.
Well, I've been offering a service here in Tramore and the surrounds. We've been doing 2 meals for €15, which means that we're giving people a fair shake, and hopefully when the thing returns, I'll be remembered. That's the way I've been operating so far. Maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm right, I don't know. Only time will tell.
You've been through a lot. You're a businessman of a lot of experience, and partly the success of any person who keeps going is you shall overcome. Was that your attitude going along with this, or did you think at any stage, I'll just close the doors?
I'm here 40 years and I've reflected on that in great depth. And at my age, I'm just wondering how far more I want to go. The body is not able to keep up with the mind. I love the business. And I'm just emotional about it. But I don't know.
I was talking to somebody the other day, a woman in business, and she started crying as well, because that stress that you have as a business person, you've built up a business, you've developed such a great relationship with your clientele, you don't want to walk away from them.
Well, I don't want to give up now because I never actually got to where I wanted to go with the restaurant. I've had various shades of the restaurant, and I think I have it now up to a stage that I'd love just to do the top quality food that people want, have the atmosphere, have the quality that's abroad in other countries, and have the character and the interest and all the fresh fish and stuff that people now want. But when they go abroad, I think they have a better choice, even though we have better food in Ireland, we have better chefs in Ireland, and I mean, but they're too far adrift. And I'm 51 years a chef now, and I just want to get to the top echelon where people come in and they can get top quality food and at a fair price.
I can hear the passion in your voice.
Yeah.
51 years a chef, so how old does that make you now?
I'll be 72 this year.
That feeling of changing the business model slightly and people appreciating that, do you think there's going to be a shift in people's perceptions of what they want when they go out to eat? They may not go as many times, but they might want something a bit different. Is that what you're thinking about?
I'm thinking that when people buy a watch, they always buy the top of range watch. When they buy clothes, when they buy perfume, they always buy all the premium thing. Tommy Hilfiger is the dress code, and Ralph Lauren. And when people go to get their hair done, they always go to the top. I think people will always want quality. Now, you will eat every day and buy every day your day-to-day things, but people will always want that little extra touch. I mean, our Valentine's Day, Easter, Mother's Day, all them festivals and occasions, we put on a humane effort that gives top quality stuff, puts all the extras that were the norm 40 years ago, but they've gone off the table now. I mean, when I came here first, I used to get £75 in 1985 for a 4-course dinner, and now it's, I don't want the dessert, I don't want the main course. But I do think people will come back to the fact where they want to go out to dine and have a social evening rather than eat and go. I think that factor will go. I think we've had that since the austerity measures for the last 10 or 15 years, and people are going to go back and say, oh my God, that's a lovely place. We got good food, the service is good, it's warm, the music is right. I think that people will come back to the fact that they need to say, oh, look at that now, and that's an interesting place, rather than just eat and go, you know. I think that we will come back to that. I may be wrong, but I mean, there are places around the country, and I just want to be one of them.
How many tables have you lost altogether? How many people will be in, like, a capacity? What are you looking at when reopening happens?
When reopening happens, I'm thinking that I might be covered for 70 seating arrangements, if that's the whole place open.
That's down from what would have been the maximum before.
400.
Wow.
Yeah.
Is that a sustainable business model then?
Not with the previous staffing I had. My staffing levels were up around 1920. It's a high staffing level, but I mean, I have very high standards. Like, I mean, I want people to be looked after, you know. I mean, I don't want people getting up from the table and having to go to the bar to get a drink. I want them to have the luxury of having people to look after them. Them staffing levels, will I be able to achieve them again? I don't know. Certainly the cost factors of doing business now are very, very downturn for people in business. I mean, i.e. rates, water, you know what I mean? I mean, just to have, say, a television in a pub now showing sports, I mean, there's nearly 10,000 quid a year. And water, I mean, there's 10,000 quid a year. Insurance is 15,000 a year. Having your accountant is 15,000 a year. I mean, you could make them up.
So if they cut VAT, for example, if they did use something for at least the next year to keep you going?
Well, I mean, VAT went from 9.5 to 14.5. For what reason, I don't know. But my being on this is health and education. You can do all the health and education you like. Where are all the people that were in the hospitals? There's no one in the hospitals now. I think we've overdone that, and we've spent so much in the wrong area. 3 billion for a new hospital up in Dublin, so much for roads and so much for this. We just spend colossal money on the wrong things. We need to bring down the VAT levels the same as they are in Spain, Portugal and other countries like that. I mean, in our business, people are not highly paid, but I mean, they put in a great effort, and they rely an awful lot on getting good tips. But you have to have a really luxury place to bring in the people that want to tip and feel like they've been looked after, and that they've just got that little bit extra, and then people will tip. Because I mean, if you go abroad, I mean, their wages are only quarter of what they are here, but their tipping is very high, because they go out of their way to make sure the punter is looked after. Will the government do anything about it? I can't see that they do. I mean, the Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, I mean, that needs to be addressed in a huge way. I mean, we need to rationalise where we have a limited number of TDs, a limited number of councillors, a limited number of people that they can say, yes, we are controlled by one body, and if you don't like it, you change over. You look at the government now, we have 3% for Labour in the last election. How did they get in with a top majority 10 years ago? Why were they flavour of the month? Then Fine Gael got in, they were flavour of the month. And you can't just keep turfing people out because they do a wrong thing. That's like throwing me out because you think I'm a dictator.
Listen, it's lovely to talk to you. Thank you so much. I know you're passionate about the place and you're passionate about your staff and your food and your customers, and genuinely the very best of luck. When is reopening due to happen at this stage?
Reopening is the 29th, on Monday the 29th. And we're
Can't come quick enough.
It can't come quick enough. We're on course for it. But I mean, my fear, as I stand here talking to you, is that I'll be starting at a base level with no money, and that I'll end up 100,000 in debt in 6 months' time. If we don't address, I mean, ESB, gas, I mean, they cost me 50,000 a year. I mean, just our cost factor for the money you take in, they just don't add up. Something has to be done.
Paul, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And Paul, thank you very much for talking to us and for being so honest and so revealing and so natural and normal about it, because sometimes you get to talk to business people and they'll shy over things. And a text just came in, oh my God, that man is so clever, get him a job in government, he should be running a country, he knows the reality of business, profit making and VAT rate. Brilliant speaker, well done to him. And other people saying the very best of luck to him. Keep your texts and comments coming in. We're going to be talking about thermal imaging next. Now, quite a few texts coming in about Grattan Square in Dungarvan. We're going to be talking about that after 11 o'clock. Firstly, I'm going to go straight to Ger Finnan, CEO of DD Total Solutions. Good morning, Ger.
Good morning, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Ger, DD Total Solutions. Just to clear this up, you were with TQS, is that it?
I was a CEO for TQS for a number of years.
Okay.
And I've now set up DD Total Solutions, so we're running with that. No issue with TQS. We're the best friends, and they're a super company, and they're going to go on from strength to strength. So,
very good. Yeah,
to see them grow.
Yeah, I didn't know that because I put up a Facebook post earlier in the week, and I thought it was still TQS as such. And what does DD stand for, by the way? Is there a title on it?
Data driven.
Data driven. Okay, Total Solutions. And so it's a new company. Yourself, and is it a few others, or is it just yourself, or how's it working?
Myself and a few others. A few other companies actually in partnership, to be honest with you, because looking at what was happening over the last couple of months, I took the view that there needed to be a more cohesive approach rather than a single company trying to make profit. There needed to be more partnership. There needed to be more direction towards the smaller sectors of society. So that's what drove that, to be honest with you.
Okay, and what we're looking at now is thermal imaging, and you were involved in putting up the system into the broadcast centre here as well. So effectively, what some people might have seen on televisions a few years ago and on movies, the idea that you put your face up to a particular screen and it takes an image of your face. It has I suppose you've registered that maybe beforehand, and then it takes your temperature. It might allow you into the door. So this might be applicable to companies that need recognition for face and also for temperature for staff members.
Yeah, there's a lot of different myths out there in relation to this. Yes, it can do facial recognition, but for the majority of cases, it can also mimic your existing card system or fob system for access control. But in addition to that, if you swipe your fob, it can just, within 1.2 seconds, take your temperature and match it to the fob and say, okay, you know what, you are the person who has the fob and your temperature is below a certain level, so yes, I'm opening the door. You can go for the full facial recognition so that you can eliminate the fob altogether or the card altogether. Some places like that, some places don't. But the key function is it doesn't capture an image if you haven't agreed for your image to be on the system. So if a person walks up to any of these units, all it will do is measure temperature. It won't capture an image of the person and store it. And that eliminates any GDPR issues or any possible concerns around capturing data from people. So I think it's important to point that out, that it's a passive system, and it's a system that's designed to raise confidence rather than to ensure compliance, so that's where it's driving.
And we might go down the route, you never know, a Minority Report type movie sequence where Tom Cruise is walking into a shop and his image is captured and it reflected in all. Who knows where this is going to go in the future, but at the minute, the GDPR legislation, that's correct, because I had to sign a form here with that. A lot of people were talking about the proposals that when people walk into shops, that a staff member or somebody might have a thermal image, like those little temperature guns, you could call it. Put it up to your forehead, it records your temperature and allow you to go in. Now, there's a bit of toing and froing on this in the council about whether this is going to be applicable across Waterford City, County or the country. You might get a little passport as such to show your temperature for the day. What's your thoughts on things such as that, Ger?
Well, to be honest with you, I was very impressed with the level of engagement from Waterford City and County Council and the Chamber in Waterford when they were looking at how to raise confidence for people going back into town, if you like. And that's a term that Irish people have been using for a long, long time, on going to town. And when people would say that, there would never be fear, there would never be trepidation. It would be a case of, I'm just going to town. And that was one of the things that group that got together wanted, to eliminate any possible fear of somebody coming back into town. Whether that town was Waterford City or whether it was Tramore or whether it was Dungarvan, it didn't really matter. And one of the areas they said was, well, we have to raise the awareness for everybody, and we have to make sure that every business has a level playing field. And what you will notice is that some businesses, when they're coming back, will have their own temperature scanners. They'll be able to afford a staff member to stand there and take temperatures. And other businesses, maybe a single occupier, a single owner, will be struggling, as we heard from the last caller in relation to putting all of his savings back into his restaurants. Now, it's unfair to ask him to put additional restrictions on the door or on staff members or on people coming back in and out. So there had to be a method where you could spread that risk and spread that load across everybody. And what Waterford pioneered was looking at that thermal passport, where you could have a number of units centrally in the city centre where any person could walk up to the unit, have their temperature taken, no GDPR issues, because it would just literally take your temperature and issue you with the equivalent of a parking ticket, which would be your thermal passport. And that would have a QR code. And when you approach another business, they could have a simple phone or a simple tablet, either stuck on the door or a staff member holding, that you could scan your ticket against that, and it would recognise that your temperature had already been taken somewhere else and it didn't need to be taken again, and you could gain access.
Okay, that might be okay for a lot of people that have that have smartphones. I know a lot of people, the vast majority of people do, but let's say you're a pensioner that is not into technology. You don't even have a card, you use still cash. The idea, are you going to be stopped going into a shop if you don't have a QR code? Like, people wouldn't even know what a QR code is.
Absolutely not. And I think that's a very valid point. And this is not about stopping people going anywhere. It's about giving people a little bit more confidence. And to be honest with you, the whole point of the passport was that you didn't need a phone, that you would get this little card. And even the comfort for yourself of walking up to one of these machines and saying, I'm going to take my temperature there and see what it's like. And it would give you a temperature and it would give you a ticket to and grand. You may never go into a shop, but at least you've walked up and you've had your temperature taken, because there is trepidation with some people when they approach a shop as to whether or not they'll get in if there's temperature being taken. So it's quite an intrusive thing to queue up for 10, 15, 20 minutes in some cases, and then have somebody taking your temperature at the door, because you don't know whether you're going to get in or get out, and what happens if your temperature is too high and you refuse access. So there are a number of things that need to be teased out when going back and eliminated. And what we were trying to do was to find a passive way that would be non-intrusive, that people could take the control of this themselves and be able to deal with it and run with it. And that was to help a lot of the smaller shops to be able to engage with customers as well at that confidence level,
I think it's a debate, Ger, that's we're only starting it, because people will be asking, somebody was asking yesterday about people getting hot flushes or temperature changes, and others saying no, the medical experts would say they don't change like that. So it's a debate that's only beginning. We might get you in next week to have a chat about it with a couple of others, if that's okay with you.
Absolutely, no problem, because we have developed a range of different systems for hospitality and a whole range for restaurants as well, in relation to just electronic menus, so that people in the queue can actually see the menu without having to download apps and things like that. So that's I'd be delighted to have a chat with you.
Okay. Ger, thanks for talking to us. Good luck with the new company, okay?
Thank you very much. Take care.
Take it easy. Mind yourself. Ger Finnan there, CEO of DD Total Solutions. What do you think? It's a whole new ballgame, folks. Maria's just texted in. OMG, what next will they think of? Your temperature can go up for many reasons. This could be COVID-19 shopping. It'll become a nightmare. Others saying, I think it's going to be a great idea. Others saying, are you going to have to pay for this? Another text in, things are getting out of hand. Temperature checks for all shops and shopping. I don't know. Somebody texted about what Paul was saying earlier. Paul was advocating tipping to subsidise wages. The hotel industry did not pass on any VAT reductions last time, and some charged too much. Stay with us. We're going to be talking now with a man who has ideas about how to think outside the box, how to make sure that we have a vibrant economy going forward. Now, Paul texted in to say it's up to people of Waterford to shop local and make sure that City and Dungarvan and all our local towns and villages recover. They need our support more than ever. That's one of the things I'm going to talk now with the chair of the Land Development Agency and the Small and Medium Enterprise Recovery Ireland, John Moran. The National Small Business Recovery Plan, what Waterford can do post-crisis and how we think outside the box. John, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, how are you? Thank you.
Not at all. Thank you very much for talking to us. John, what's your appraisal of where we are at the minute? Let's talk, I suppose, nationally first regarding the economic revival plan and how the government is handling the building blocks for recovery.
As you know, I've been chairman of an SME recovery Deise effort. So a lot of the focus I've had in the last couple of weeks has been looking at seeing what's happening small and local business. It's against that context, I suppose, that you think of these things, even though a couple of weeks ago I was probably known as Mr. Housing because of the LDA, and we're still piling on with sort of planning commission stuff and the LDA stuff. Yeah. But I guess where I don't want to be sort of a total scaremonger, but I am very worried about things. I mean, I think that the penny is only dropping now after we're over the health scare, just how serious this is going to be on the economic side. The problem with it this time round, I mean, last time we had a recession, it was a major hit to everybody. This one is hitting particularly, intensely on certain people. I mean, it's very much hitting small and local businesses that were closed. The bills ran up. It's hitting very much young, sort of, even male, but obviously also other people working in retail and other industries outside of Dublin, and so I think we're going to have to not just do a general fix for everybody as much as we did the last time in terms of releasing sort of VAT rates, but actually really focused measures to fix the problems that are going to be there when we kind of reopen. And it's going to be a big bill. I mean, and I think we need to understand that.
Yeah, just specifically on, we'd say, men and young women in their age group from, we'd say, 18 to 32. Traditional recessions, there is a safety valve of emigration. That may not happen this time round for the next 3 to 4 years because many other economies are in the same boat as ourselves. This cohort of people that are going to be caught in this trap.
I'm from Limerick, and so often felt so that between Waterford and Limerick there's sort of a kindred spirit. I mean, the cities actually share many of the same characteristics. In particular, sort of, young, as I said, relatively unskilled sort of, workforce that frankly were the first to be let go across the whole range. And we're hoping that if we can this time around see construction pick up a bit more, because we went into the crisis with effectively a housing deficit and a need to build up regional cities so that Dublin wasn't the only place in town. That will obviously help some of that cohort of people. But I think we're going to need an awful lot of really clever thinking about apprenticeships and, new forms of training, and, more businesses will need to go online, and therefore they will need to have help to do that and how that works. And I think it's not a case of just switching off the lights for a couple of weeks or a couple of months and that all will be the same when we come out. And we really hope that the people up in sort of, preparing the programme for government this week are focusing on that just as much as they should be focusing on issues like sustainability and the rest, because if businesses and that cohort of people get forgotten about in this plan and aren't made a huge priority, this recession, which we're going to have, is just going to drag for much longer than it needs to.
Yeah, I remember some very good phrases before the Good Friday Agreement talking about we have to think our way outside of this problem. It's not just good enough to throw money at it, as you say. That might be money wasted. So in terms of some initiatives and outside the box thinking, give me a couple of things that you think, for example, regional towns and cities such as Waterford, Limerick could at least aspire to.
Yeah, well, look, some things haven't changed, right? I mean, if anything, I think they may even be a little bit easier going forward. So, lots of people in Waterford I know have been joining me in the debate about the power that we could get if we could unleash the potential of regional cities, how the pressure that would take off of Dublin and everything else. We've spent our time trying to convince people that you can actually work from home or from remote locations, that you don't need to be doing 2-hour commutes. And all of that has suddenly become a reality, right? I mean, we've had the investment by firms across Ireland that normally would take years. They've done it in weeks to allow people to work from remote locations. And I think that is sort of really some of the nub of the potential for regional cities to really go after that big time and have people understand that not everything needs to be in Dublin 1 and Dublin 2. But to do that well, I think it's going to need this. I mean, I'll still go back to where I was before. I think the 4 regional cities should be collaborating with each other so that together they have 1 or 2 million people, because sometimes for FDI and for companies, you just need a certain scale or for investment. And if that's happening, then I think each of the areas, the southeast, but Waterford at its centre, need to have a kind of a holistic plan for itself, and so that it becomes one of the more attractive places to be, to live, to play, and to work. And that's going to take investment. But as you said, being clever about how you spend that money and what that needs.
How important are psychological boosts for a region? For example, it may not cost an awful lot to develop Waterford Regional Airport. It may not be economically viable at present, but can projects bring more to the table than just simple mathematics? Can it give people a boost to say we're on the right track?
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about that, right? I mean, and it can be really small stuff. I mean, we launched in the middle of the crisis up here in Limerick, I think, Lean On Me, which was .eu, which is a voucher scheme, so people could buy vouchers. And the feedback we got from businesses was just connecting them to their customers was actually more important than the amount of money that they were getting, which was significant. It was, as you say, psychological boost that gets there. I think that in the next couple of months and probably 2 or 3 years, a lot of the focus, I think, in terms of infrastructural spend needs to kind of knit everything together. And that's really important. It's not just picking a project because that's what we wanted to have before. And again, I'm not saying that should be the airport, but international travel is going to be a lot less of our lives going forward until we're much more comfortable about it. Whereas on the other hand, making the public realm in Waterford, thinking about how it operates, really attractive to get people shopping locally, doing projects that are relatively intensive in terms of labour. That's money that I think is very well spent in the next while, because it kind of brings together the need to deal with this unemployment problem that we're inevitably going to have, needs to bring together the sort of building up of the regional cities, doing housing in the areas, doing quality infrastructure, public realm, so there's more space for people to operate safely. They feel more comfortable coming into town. Chambers Ireland, I think this morning, not unsurprisingly, were out quickly commenting that although we were all very relieved yesterday to see shops reopening, I heard some of the people sort of on your own radio, Catherine from Red Lane and Boutique and what she was doing down from Tramore. But at the same time, the numbers are down, and they will be down for some time, because some people don't have as much money, some people have savings, but they're afraid to go in. And I think what I would be saying to sort of towns, as we're doing here in Limerick, and saying it here, is you need to focus on all those little projects that give a real boost. And so let somebody have a really nice street in front of their shops, and then they can spill out a little bit, people come in, there's a bit more. Because I think shopkeepers particularly, having been one of them, even a 5% rise in sales or 10% rise in sales at a tough time is really meaningful. I mean, you see it straight away in the cash register. You feel a bit better at the end of the evening or the end of the week. And that can give everybody a bit of a lift.
Yeah, no, that's very, very good. John, are you confident? It's hard to maybe gauge this or put it on a scale of 1 to 10, but we've had a great ability in Ireland to think our way out of problems, and there is a lot of positivity there that we can build on, yeah?
Look, I'm actually an optimist. I mean, and have been. And last time around, I really felt we could get out of things a bit faster than a lot of other people were saying in 2012, because you could see that, spirit coming through. This time, I suppose I'm still in a very kind of nervous state, because I don't think that we've fully appreciated the extent to which this crisis could hit. I mean, particularly if the UK and the US, are very badly hit as well. When they get a cold, we get the flu. I mean, and so it's going to take a kind of change in heart, I suppose. I'm hoping that we do get a new government this week. It's not going to be easy as we hear it. And, imagine if we don't get a government across the line, we don't have people to make decisions. We're back into a general election at exactly the time when we need strong leadership. And that's very worrying. Even if we do get a new government, and hopefully we will, I think that the measures that they have to take and the way they have to look at it, they have to sort of do for the economic recovery now what they did for the health recovery. A really strong kind of calling to action for everybody across the country, working together to really get us out of this. And that's going to take some funding. And I know everybody's probably banging on the door of the Taoiseach and the Minister for Finance at the moment, saying borrow money. But we have to recognise it is a time when we can borrow more money. It's not like when I was at the Department of Finance. But going back to where we started, it's really important that if we're borrowing, and it will be big numbers, it'll be 30, it'll be 40 billion, it may be more. If we are borrowing that level of money, that we spend it as wisely as we can. And that needs a plan. It needs a sort of 2, 3, 4 year plan to make sure that all the pieces fit together.
John Moore, it's a pleasure as ever. Thanks very much for talking to us.
No, thank you, Jim.